Welcome to another edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes reporter John Steppe. I am joined today by Tom Kakert, the publisher of HawkeyeReport.com, the Iowa affiliate of the Rivals Network. Tom, thanks for joining me today.
Always enjoy coming on with you, John.
Thank you.
We're still talking football. We're still
Yes.
talking a football game. We didn't think we'd be doing this a week ago, did we?
No, I certainly didn't think so 4 weeks ago.
No.
When it was
Wouldn't have
6
thought
and 2, I was thinking, I wouldn't book any hotel reservations to Indy. And now I kind of wish that I did.
I know it's a little more expensive, and now some of us have to it's a commute now. It's a big commute, right?
Yeah. So first things first, before we get to the big game on Saturday, the big news out of Iowa City yesterday, Deuce Hogan, the highly anticipated recruit who is really credited with helping recruit other athletes in his recruiting class, seemed to be kind of a fan favorite too. Granted, nobody's more popular than the backup quarterback, but the popular guy put his name in the transfer portal, and that leaves Iowa with one less quarterback. Can't say it's really a huge surprise, but the news finally hit yesterday.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise. Maybe the surprise was that it happened right now.
Before Saturday too.
And did Kirk's comments, about maybe I would have stayed home if we had to play a third string quarterback, and he named him and he apologized to him for it. And he, talked about it on Tuesday at his press conference and said, hey, I shouldn't have named him. I should have just said third string or whatever. But it is what it is. To me, it tells me that Deuce was already going to leave, and maybe this moved along quicker. Just that he would. Here's the thing: quarterbacks, you can only play one at a time. Although Iowa's played two in games, twice this year.
But that's rare.
It's rare.
That hasn't happened in a long time before this.
It is so rare. Really, the last time Iowa did the two quarterback routine was the Taxslayer Bowl, when they were auditioning, Jake Rudock and CJ Beathard, and going 2 series, and then the other guy got 2 series, and they used the bowl game as kind of a, let's see if we can figure out who's going to be the quarterback. And then it ended up being, then Kirk issued that depth chart in early January, which never had happened before. And it was just to announce that CJ Beathard was the quarterback. And then right after that, Jake Rudock was transferring. So basically these guys want to play, and he sees that he's behind Spencer, and Spencer's going to be around for, at least one more year.
And Padilla.
And Padilla's going to be around for a while. And, frankly, I've heard, I've shared this before. I've on our boards and on our podcasts, I've heard some really, really good things all year about Joey Labus, the freshman quarterback. He's running scout team, but he's, just say that they really like him and kind of the way he's handling himself. And I think he was going to be pushing Deuce for that third spot, and he probably knew that. And I think Deuce just wants to play, and fans get caught up sometimes, and it's partly our fault. Gave him 4, the Rivals gave him 4 stars, and everybody thinks 4-star quarterback, he's going to be a superstar. Why isn't he playing? I got so many questions about Deuce in the offseason. It was, and nobody really talked about Padilla, but it was always, they should play Deuce. They should. Well, and I'd always say, what have you seen from him in an Iowa uniform that suggests he should start over Spencer or anybody? Just get these limited views of him. So anyway, I wish Deuce well. He's a nice kid. And perhaps there's more of an opportunity for him to play, back home in Texas, a school back there, or someplace that just gives him an opportunity. He'll get an opportunity somewhere, and I wish him well.
Yeah, and the thing too with kind of the recruiting stars is, I mean, you'll be the first one to admit that that's not an exact science
No,
there.
yeah, it's not. It's for everyone that we get right, hey, AJ Epinesa was a 5-star. Well, no kidding. Look at him. But for one of those, there's a Micah Hyde or somebody like that who is a 2-star that ends up being great. Or a good example on the current team, Riley Moss was just a late guy that they got, and look at him. Yesterday, he's named the top defensive back in the Big Ten. It's awesome for him. And just Iowa has a tendency to disprove the stars matter. Now, I do think they do, but it's also I always think if you want a true evaluation of a player, you do that star assignment on players after their career is done, at the end of 4 years or 3 years in or whatever. You can kind of say, yeah, we missed on that one. He's a 4-star. He's really a 4-star. We're just projecting when they're coming in. So,
and Kayvon Merriweather is another great example there.
Kayvon was, he was a lightly recruited football player. He was more of a basketball player, to be honest, when he was in high school. And, he was talking about that. One of the guys on the Michigan team, he was AAU teammates with in 8th grade or whatever. And, they just come from all different places, and there's always different paths. Jack Kerner, walk on. It's interesting how guys find play. Seth Benson was, he was a FCS kid until Iowa offered him. I mean, there's all kinds
Charlie
of guys.
Jones too, another great example.
Charlie Jones
with Buffalo.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different paths to success, and that's what makes college football fun. That's what makes following it fun. I think it's just the stories that emerge out of nowhere, the guys that end up being great players that were really lightly recruited in the recruiting process.
And speaking of Kayvon and Michigan, he'll be going up against that AAU teammate this weekend. It's a unique opportunity here. These games don't happen every day. Last one is 2015. If Iowa is able to somehow pull off the upset, it'd be their first title since I think it's 2004. Yep. So this is a pretty unique opportunity here. And yes, Iowa is certainly the underdog here, but even just making it is a big statement here for the Iowa program.
It is, because this was, like you talked about earlier, 4 weeks ago, it just didn't seem like it was in the cards at all. And it ended up working out for them, thanks to, a win, a comeback. It had to be, the classic Iowa way, a comeback win against Nebraska. When they were dead, Iowa was dead in the water. We were sitting in that press box, John, and they were dead in the water. And then the block punt changed everything. You could just feel the air suck out of Memorial Stadium at that point. And the Nebraska fans, I heard one of them up in the press box. Somebody said, "Oh no, here we go again," and they just knew what was happening. And then Saturday, you see Minnesota take care of business, and that was terrific for Iowa, that they're getting this opportunity now. It's the second time they made it. Both times they played schools from Michigan, which is interesting,
especially considering how Ohio State is considered the top team in the East.
100%,
years. To then get the two Michigan schools, kind of two favorable draws there.
Yeah, and the quarterbacks who are more game manager than superstar. Back in the 15 team, it was Connor Cook for Michigan State. This year it's Cade McNamara, and they're built around the ground game. With that Michigan team, like LJ Scott was the great guy, and then this year it's Hassan Haskins, and you also got Blake Corum, and those guys are really good. I mean, you don't just run for almost 300 yards against Ohio State and not be good. I mean, they dominated that Ohio State team, and myself included, I think everybody else in the college football world was penciling, boy, maybe Ohio State can give Georgia a tough game. And, they were just rolling. I
Yeah.
joked all last week. I'm like, boy, I don't even know if I'd want Iowa to make the Big Ten title game, because what would happen if they get thrown in front of that Ohio State bus that's just rolling down the highway at 100 miles an hour, scoring points that 49 points against Michigan State in the first half was just, that was something. I mean,
Yeah.
that's frightening. But Michigan got them. They just out toughed them, and here we are.
And you wonder maybe if the snow did a little bit of a favor to Iowa there, because you kind of wonder if that snowy conditions weren't happening, if maybe Ohio State's offense moves a little more efficiently, maybe a different set of circumstances, and then you'd have Ohio State's offense going up against, their offense going up against a defense that forces turnovers, but still, that could get ugly pretty fast when you look at who they have at quarterback, at running back, at offensive line, at wide receiver, kind of just across the board. That's a stacked team. So
on Ohio State, it's almost like you got to plan on having a shootout with them. And Iowa's not built for shootouts. They're just not. But this is a game that I always joke, I like boxing. So I always, and combat sports and stuff like that. And I always say, styles make great fights. And this is a good style fight for Iowa, because Michigan's old school. They just want to come up. They're going to punch you in the mouth. They're going to play tough defense. They're going to get after it there. They're going to hit you hard, and they're going to run the ball. They're not a big air it out kind of team. They're a ground and pound. And that's kind of Iowa as well. So it's just going to come down to, they're also really good on special teams. I mean, their punters are really good. Moody is finalist for the Groza Award. So they're really good in that area as well, just like Iowa. And so it's a lot of commonality there. And it's going to come down to who can make a play, who can make less mistakes, who can win first and second down and sustain drives. And that's who's going to end up winning this game.
And I think the interesting kind of positional battle that I'll be really following is that Iowa offensive line versus the Michigan defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson is no easy player to go up against. I think I saw one mock draft that even said he was projected to be the number 1 overall pick. I think that might be a little bullish, but still, he's probably going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, higher than Linderbaum. And Linderbaum, as everyone knows who is listening to this, is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. So that's going to be a difficult challenge for Iowa when the inexperience there really is at both tackle positions, to then have to deal with him and Ojabo on the other side too.
Yeah, those guys have combined for 24 sacks. And the first thought with Aiden Hutchinson is, we saw the Purdue game and we saw what Karlaftis did. Now, I think he was credited with like 1 tackle in the game, which is insane because he was just spending the entire game in Spencer Petrus's grill. And we saw he wrecked Iowa that day. He wrecked Iowa's offense solely on his own, wrecked Iowa's offense. And Hutchinson's probably a little bit better than Karlaftis. They're both, first round NFL draft picks. But now you got Ojabo on the other side. I mean, that's some frightening stuff for those young tackles. I was talking to Tyler Goodson about that yesterday, because he and Gavin Williams and Potty Bomb are going to have to, and probably Laporta and Lachey, they're going to have to chip on that edge and help try and keep Spencer upright, because those guys could, you look at what Hutchinson did in that Ohio State game. I think it was Pro Football Focus had the number where it was the most pressures by a single person ever since they've been cataloging this. He had like 15 quarterback pressures. It's crazy. That's
going up against Ohio State's offensive line too.
Yeah. It's frightening from an Iowa perspective. they're going to have to figure out a way to somewhat neutralize him. I don't think you can stop him, but you can lessen his impact on the game. They're going to have to try and find a way to do that. And boy, that's to me, that's the key matchup of the game. It really is can Iowa's offensive line build a run game? Can they protect Spencer enough to get him time? They're going to have to run a lot of quick game, I think, some screens, because they're going to, just let those guys go and just run some screen games with Tyler. I think that is a possibility. But and you got to mix in some shots, but I don't know how you're going to get many of those you're going to get. I think rollout game might be important too, with Spencer.
And Spencer did a little more rolling out, I noticed, against Nebraska than in some previous games. So he maybe improved a little bit on that while he had the time behind Padilla.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really important too, is to get him outside the pocket. Sometimes you got to move it, because then you can at least take one of those guys out of play a little bit. But that's the challenge. The challenge is, can Iowa? And the other thing that I'm looking at when I'm coming into this game is that we've seen it the last couple games. Iowa's kind of been average at best early in games on defense. Yeah. They've given up, the Illinois game, they gave up 10 points early, and then Charlie Jones changes the game with special teams play.
And Minnesota, 200 rushing yards in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah, and then you look at last week with Nebraska, the Smothers kid was running wild for a lot of that game, and they've got Phil always makes an adjustment, and it gets there eventually, and they win that fourth quarter battle, and they kind of figure it out. But they can't wait till, if they do that against Michigan, it's going to be 28-7 at the half if they don't buckle down quick. And that's not a hill I don't think they can climb. You could climb that against Nebraska, because Nebraska finds a way to lose games. Michigan won't find a way to lose it. Yeah. They'll let you back in.
Nebraska, half the staff is interim.
Yeah.
After, well, maybe not quite 50%, but a lot of them are.
For at least 4 of them, and that's still crazy to me that they let those guys go at that point. Just insane.
Yeah. It's not to win football games the rest of the year, that's for sure.
No,
but it'll be an interesting matchup. I think running wise, Iowa's been doing a lot of jet sweeps, but I don't know how much success you can have on that when you don't have the help from the tackles there. So we'll see what maybe some interior running, but even the interior of Michigan's defensive line is really good.
Iowa's found success running the inside zone and running behind Schott and Linderbaum. And I think that's where you got to go. And they've lived there pretty well. And I'll take my chances running behind Linderbaum any day of the week. Because I think he'll win that battle 9 times out of 10. But the outside zone's it's been lost. I mean, it's like half the time Goodson's tackled for a 4-yard loss, 3-yard loss. And that's been such a bread and butter play for them, the outside zone. And it's not clicked this year, and they still run it. And I remember asking Tyler or asking Linderbaum a couple of weeks ago about the outside zone and what's going on there. And he goes, we'll still run it. We'll still run it. We're going to still run it.
Consistent.
Yeah, they got to do it. So
yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup, I think, with this defensive front against Michigan's running game, because Iowa statistically has been one of the better teams at slowing down the run, and credit there, because it's not an experienced defensive line necessarily as much as it's been in past years. So credit there to that position group, and Kelvin Bell and Neiman and kind of that whole staff there to have that group going.
They have exceeded my expectations coming into the season. Because I had a lot of questions about how good that group could be. How good are those guys going to be able to, are they going to be able to sustain it? We knew Van Valkenburg would be okay. But how much depth did they have? And some of that depth took a hit with, like Ethan Herkett getting hurt early in the year. Logan Jones slow to come back, and they were counting on him, I think, at D tackle. But they have really kind of ramped it up, and Logan Lee's played really well. I'm a Logan Lee guy. He's from my area, so
and on special teams too, with the blocked field goal, I think that was against Illinois.
Yeah, and so he's playing well.
Lucas Van Ness too.
Lucas Van Ness has been terrific. John Wagner, I think, has had a really solid season. Noah Shannon, I think, has been good as well. Wyatt Black has kept coming and kept improving. They've got a lot of guys there. They've got to be able to win first down, though. They can't. Iowa can't. I always say a couple things about Iowa. On offense, they can't live in 3rd and 8, and they can't on defense. They can't live in 3rd and 3. It's just tough for them to do. The defense has to. If the defense lives in 3rd and 8, that they're going to win. They're going to win those battles. But if they're having to live in 3rd and short, it's tough for them. And same thing on offense. I mean, Iowa's just not built to win 3rd and 8 battles on offense. They're just not.
No. And you look at Nebraska, the big issue that the defense had was on first down.
Yep.
Where is something crazy, I think 8 yards, I think it might have been, per first down attempt for Nebraska, which is insane. Okay, it's gonna be pretty hard to win football games like that. And obviously a couple big plays skews the average a lot, but still, it's a tough way to win games that way. And
their RPO game was killing Iowa for a while. I mean, Smothers was just, that mesh was just really good, and he was making good reads on that, and he was getting away from them. And I was afraid of that because you don't know how good he is. You don't have a feel for him.
Oh yeah, when you don't have any film.
Yeah.
When you and I have thrown, going into that game, 3 fewer Big Ten passes than he did. And you don't want to see my spiral.
No, mine either. Mine left a long time ago.
So, that is one benefit with this Michigan matchup is, okay, at least there's plenty of film of what the Wolverines are going to do. It isn't like it's this kind of mystery. Oh, what could Smothers be? What might not he be?
Yeah, can he throw it? We know what they're going to do, what Michigan's going to do. They're going to run Haskins. They're going to run Quorum. The Edwards kid's pretty good too. They're going to run guys, and they're going to play power football. And I think that's what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. I think that's where he likes to be. That's his identity. That's the Michigan football that he grew up on when he played for Bo Schembechler. Is power football, run the football. That's what they're going to do, and it's going to be who can win the lines of scrimmage. That's who wins that game. It's really that simple.
Well, any score prediction yet?
I'm probably going to end up picking Michigan. I just think they're kind of living that way, but Harbaugh said something the other night when we were on that teleconference with them that really resonated with me. And talking to some of the Michigan guys, they're kind of concerned about it too. And it's that game last week was like the U.S. Olympic hockey team in 1980 when they beat the Russians. And everybody forgets that they had to come back and beat Finland, I think it was, for the gold medal 2 days later. And the scene with Herb Brooks, if you don't win that game, you're going to take it to your grave kind of speech that he gave to the team. So I think you'll see a little Herb Brooks speech from Jim Harbaugh probably to his team to get them fired up, because they're beating Ohio State's it's funny that winning against Ohio State might be bigger to them than winning a national title, just because it's so big up there. Beating Ohio State is just so big
Oh
for
yeah,
that program.
the game.
It's the game. It's the game. But this is, I just think they're playing at a little higher level. But I'm not counting Iowa out
Mhm.
at all, because it would be the most Iowa thing ever. And we've seen a lot of most Iowa things ever this year with how, look at how they've won the last two games with like one offensive touchdown and a kick return or a block punt and a bunch of field goals. And, it's just, that's how they've been winning games is, a defensive touchdown with Jack Campbell against Illinois. And that's how they've been winning games. Right.
Yeah.
And they probably would it shock me? No, it wouldn't shock me if they walk out of there, 24-20 winners on Saturday night, just doing the little things to get the job done.
Yeah, and likely a strong third and fourth quarter to do it. And
Yep.
the things could fall into line. I don't think it will. My score prediction for right now I may change my mind another 2 times before arriving in Indianapolis, but right now I'm thinking 31-17 Michigan.
Okay.
I think this team is just so good when you look at, and even with, Cade McNamara is not the focal point of the offense, but when you look at his efficiencies, he's really thrown the ball well when they have turned to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like this is they're just going to run the ball and they don't really have any passing game. Like how everyone thought Wisconsin would be before Graham Mertz had like the best first quarter of his life. So, it's not like they're a one-dimensional offense either. No. And you mentioned the special team strength. I think that's another spot where, Iowa's been able to capitalize. I mean, Nebraska doesn't have a full-time special teams coordinator. So when you have LeVar Woods, one of the best special teams coordinators in the country, going up against a team that doesn't have a full-time person on special teams, well, that's going to show. So, and I think the biggest thing is just going to be the Iowa offensive line versus the Michigan defensive line. If Iowa can pull it off, credit to them, but I think it's going to be a tough matchup there when you have some guys who've been improving a lot, but it's still Jack Plum versus Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah.
No offense to Jack Plum, but I think most people would take Aiden Hutchinson in that matchup.
Yeah, I think they probably would. Here's the thing I'm going to throw out there for Iowa fans, and that is I think you empty the playbook in this game. And if you've got some gadgets, you got some surprises, I mean, why not play them? Why not do those things? Because this is kind of, no one expects you to win. So let's take a shot. Let's swing big and see if you can get that. And I think that's kind of the mentality you have to have is I'm going to try some things and it might blow up in Iowa's face and spectacularly fail, but at least you took the swing and you took the, maybe some exotics, some trick plays, some different,
or like that things. Nico Ragaini Penn State play.
Yeah, the halfback, a halfback pass, the Philly special, like they tried to run in that game with where Ragaini got blown up. But run the Philly special, run a double reverse pass, run some fun, just take a swing. I think this is the spot to do it because they got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Iowa's playing with house money. They're not supposed to be here. No. you're just go all in, push all the chips to the middle of the table, take your shot. And if it doesn't work out, oh, well, everybody's going to say, see, Iowa was who we thought they were. Okay, well, that's fine. At least you took a shot.
It's interesting. Van Valkenburg was saying to me yesterday about how you enjoy or how they rather be the underdog than the number 2 team in the country, which they've experienced both of those. And, you don't have maybe the same heightened expectation I hate to use this cliche that Kirk Ferentz keeps on bringing up, but the outside noise, you don't have as much of it
Yeah,
when you're not getting asked how it feels to be the number 2 team in the country. So I think that plays into things as well. And before I let you go, a big week next week, actually a week from today as we're recording this, with Xavier Nwankpa's decision coming up, deciding between Iowa, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a little more interesting there now that Brian Kelly is gone. So maybe that narrows it down to 2 with Iowa and Ohio State.
yeah.
That, Iowa usually isn't in the running for those really top level recruits, but this could be a big get for the Hawkeyes come December 8th.
Yeah, he is Xavier's for fans who may not be aware, he's Southeast Polk High School. He's a safety. He's the top safety in the country, according to Rivals. 5-star player. Could go anywhere he wants in the country. And Iowa, if you would have told me 6-8 months ago, I would have said Iowa's probably got very little shot. I mean, it just seemed like they were outside looking in, but they've just made up so much ground with him. I put in my future forecast for Iowa. I did that a while ago. I think I was probably the first person that put my neck on the line for that. And we'll see if I'm an idiot or if I'm a genius in a week. But it just felt like it was trending towards him. He was at the Penn State game, and I think you were down there by
Yeah.
we were down there, and I was just like, yeah, there he is. And all the players were coming off and hugging him, and Caden Proctor, his teammate, 5-star offensive tackle in the class of 2023, he was standing right there, and Kyler Casper, Kevin Casper's son, and Kevin was standing there with us, and he was like, just watch, we're watching those guys come off the field. And the thing that'll always stick with me is Linderbaum coming off and grabbing Proctor by the shoulders and say, you're coming here. This is why you come here. And he just smiled and nodded his head. But yeah, Notre Dame obviously probably out now. I would think they're certainly out without.
Why would you commit if you're a top level recruit to Notre Dame right now when you don't know who the coach is going to be?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the coach that you build a relationship with.
Because about a month ago, it seemed like it was Iowa and Notre Dame with Ohio State fading, but now maybe Ohio State's picking up some ground. I know they're coming in to visit him this week. Iowa, obviously, Tyler Barnes sent out the tweet this week. Hey, we're busy. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So we're not going to be on the road. We'll be out next week. So
Ohio State doesn't have that problem this week.
Buckeyes do not have that problem. They thought they would, but they don't. They thought they would be away. But I was going to get in there probably Monday. I would guess Monday or Tuesday. I would guess Monday, though. They'll probably do an in-home with him and sit down with him and his family. But I still think it's Iowa's the team to beat. I think they've done a really good job of recruiting him. I think being a big fish in this pond is probably more attractive to him than being just another fish in the Columbus pond.
Yeah, where you have how many 5-star recruits there every year, plus with NIL.
That's where I was getting. That's where I was getting was the NIL opportunities at Iowa will be more substantial, I think, than a 5-star safety coming into Ohio State. Although, they did give Quinn Ewers like $1 million or somebody, somehow he got $1 million in NIL, and Quinn Ewers hasn't played it down at Ohio State, the quarterback who's, I think, like the 3rd string quarterback. So it's wild. It's just how it's going to be. But I think those opportunities have been sold to him as well, just in terms of the process that there's going to be opportunities for him. I mean, you look at what Caitlin Clark's doing, you look at what Spencer Lee's doing, making some money off the Caitlin Clark thing. I mean, that's got to resonate with him as a Central Iowa kid that, there's a Hy-Vee partnership there for me if I, build this thing right. And that's
and Clark was the first athlete too to make a deal with Hy-Vee. So Hy-Vee's focused on Iowa as opposed to their other Midwestern states.
Yeah, and they're going to find the athletes that are going to create a buzz, and he's going to create a buzz. He's a good kid, good talker. So we'll find out next on the 8th, late afternoon, what he's going to do. But I'm still at this point saying Iowa. I could change that if I hear something different, but right now I think the Hawkeyes are the team to beat.
Well, if to our listeners or viewers, if Tom is right, send all of the think of his prediction first. If it's not them, if it's Ohio State, well, forget Tom's. Just think about all the other people who picked Iowa too.
That's when you say that the broken clock's right twice a day, right? I was right, but more often than not, I'm wrong. So I'm not good. I'm not good in the prediction business, but I put myself out there on this one. So we'll see if it works out for me or if it doesn't. And I think here's the other thing. I think if they get Xavier, they're in great position to get Caden Proctor, and they're in a great position to get Kyler Casper. I think those two will.
What a trio!
Follow. So that's an even bolder prediction. If it works out for Iowa, I think this is going to be a nice little stretch for them. I don't know when those other guys will commit, but I think the trend would be. I may put in some future forecasts for both those guys to Iowa right after that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Tom, thanks again for joining me.
I love coming on and talking about this stuff, John. You're doing a great job at the Gazette, and
thank you.
Happy to have you on the beat.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I will see you in Indy.
Yes.
My next guest on the Hawk Off the Press podcast is Angelique Chengelis, the Michigan beat writer for the Detroit News. I got that pronunciation right?
You did, John Steps?
Yes.
Oh, Steppy. It's John Steppy. Yes.
Yes. 2 for 2 there. So
yeah.
Got an interesting
ourselves on the back.
Well, we have an interesting game coming ahead on Saturday. For somebody who's listening to this, who's been seeing a lot of Iowa, probably not a ton of Michigan in the East, what's kind of the scouting report of this 2021 Michigan team?
Well, I think Gary Barta on the college football playoff conference call week after week, I think he's described it best. The committee thinks of Michigan as a complete team, a balanced team. And I think that's fair. I think a lot of analysts have just looked at me. There's nobody that, yes, Aiden Hutchinson stands out, but it's just kind of this running physical. That's the identity of this offense. Cade McNamara runs the show. He's nothing flashy. And you got Hassan Haskins, who just is coming off a 5-touchdown performance against Ohio State. So they run the ball well. The offensive line protects well. They, given up, I think, 9 sacks this year. And they lead the country in tackles for loss, fewest tackles for loss allowed. And then on the defensive side, you've got these edge rushing duo of Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, and they're pretty impressive. And I think that's pretty much this team. I mean, they've been very balanced, John. And the one thing that has impressed me, because I've covered this team for a long, long time, under Jim Harbaugh, I think the knock was always fourth quarter, finishing in November. And this team has done that, obviously. And then that was, I think, started at Penn State. They had a little adversity and they quickly overcame that. And that's when I started thinking, okay, maybe Harbaugh's finally got the recipe here.
And it seems like Aiden Hutchinson, he's unlike any other pass rusher really in college football.
He is. I mean, he's extremely athletic. I mean, this guy works out so hard. And I hate to reveal my age here, so I won't, but I covered his father. The first team I covered, his father was a senior, and he was the defensive lineman of the year in the Big Ten that year. He had 11 sacks that season. And here's Aiden, who grew up with that, dad with 4 Big Ten championship rings. And, 4-0-1 against Ohio State, and Aiden had those rings in a shadow box on his bedroom wall. So this guy has always been geared toward being the guy at Michigan and doing what he's doing this year. But on the field, he's just everywhere. I mean, I was watching him on Saturday and just like, okay, he's over here on the right side. The ball's over here. He's finished doing it. And he races over to the ball. I'm like, how did he get there so fast? So he's got the speed. He's got the agility, and, he's into yoga. His sisters are into yoga, his mother. So he's very flexible. I mean, he really prides himself on being the complete athlete, and that goes to nutrition too. So I think that whole combination has really helped him achieve the season he has achieved so far.
And then it seems like Ajabo doesn't get quite as much of the national attention on the other side, but statistically, he's having quite the 2021 as well.
Well, and consider this, John, he didn't start playing football until his junior year in high school. I mean, he came to the United States from Scotland, and he was a soccer and basketball star in Scotland. And then he, oh, hey, okay, play some football. And he is a physical specimen. I mean, there's no doubt. And it's hard to imagine how far he can go. I mean, the upside, considering, how few of the years he's played. And, he comes in a lot on third down. So he's not out there as much as Aiden is, not playing a full game. But, 11 sacks, the two have combined for 24. I mean, what a duo. I think that's intimidating for any opposing offensive coordinator. And I asked Michigan's offensive coordinator about it the other day, about practice facing these guys. And, it's pretty intimidating to see Ajabo and to see Hutchinson.
And it seems like the interior of the defensive line can hold their own as well.
Yeah, and they got better. And that's a good point, because that was sort of the question mark coming into the season. There were a lot of question marks on defense. I mean, there's a brand new defensive coordinator, Mike McDonald, who came from the Ravens. But you're right, the interior had been an issue in the last few years, and they're getting really good play out of Chris Hinton and Mazi Smith. And I think Mazi Smith was challenged before the season to finally live up to the goals he has set for himself. And he feels pretty confident. We had a chance to talk to him after practice on Tuesday. And, he just feels like his game has so much more to show. But yeah, I mean, that was something that was lacking, and they've really gotten good production out of the interior.
And then offensively, it seems like this is a team that really is run first offensively. And then Cade McNamara kind of complements that with kind of effective, good enough passing.
Exactly. And he's really, I think the thing when people were harping early in the season about after he had 44 yards passing against Washington. I mean, they were running the ball. They were establishing themselves as a physical run first team. And, everyone wanted JJ McCarthy, the freshman, the hotshot, the 5-star. And I kept saying, people are undervaluing the fact that he doesn't turn the ball over. And at that point he hadn't. His first interception was at Nebraska. And now he has 3 this season. He had 1 against Ohio State. And, I just think that's something that you really need in a quarterback. And Michigan, the last few years, had turnover problems, not just from that position, but generally speaking. And if you have turnovers, you get in big holes like they did last year. And Josh Gaddis's offense isn't designed, at least not with the talent they had last year, to come back from that kind of deficit. So I think with Cade, they've been able to start fast. They've been able to build leads for the most part. There are a couple times they've trailed and have been able to come back. But, I think he's steady. That's all that's the word I keep using. He's steady. He's extremely confident, John. I mean, I haven't seen a kid this confident at quarterback in a while.
Wow.
Shea Patterson was here, and that was a few years ago. And, and the players believe in him, and they're not asking him to go out there and be, Joe Montana. They're asking him to run the offense and complement with this running team that they have with Hassan Haskins and Blake Corum and now the freshman Donovan Edwards.
And then it seems like it could be a good matchup then between McNamara, who doesn't turn the ball over much, and Iowa's secondary, which they call the Doughboys because of so many interceptions. So that'll be an interesting thing to see.
Oh, I think that's really impressive what Iowa has done, and it will be interesting to see. And people keep asking me about that, like, what if Michigan gets a couple turnovers? And I said, well, I mean, unless it's a pick six, I said then Iowa has to face Michigan's defense, and I'm not sure yet how proficient they are, and how efficient they are on offense. So I think you certainly don't want to turn the ball over if you're Michigan, but if you have a couple turnovers, I still think that they can overcome that. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do to counteract that and to keep it out of Iowa's hands in terms of interceptions, because that is such an impressive statistic.
And it's funny that you mentioned being unsure about what Iowa's offense is going to do efficiency wise, because I think a lot of Iowa fans are still pretty unsure about what that's going to look like. Special teams wise, it seems like Michigan, Iowa is used to seeing pretty good special teams play, but it looks like they could kind of meet their match in the special teams department on Saturday.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I bring that up a lot too, because people do tend to focus on offense, defense, of course, and Michigan special teams have been very impressive, and they're directed by Jay Harbaugh, John's son, who moved from running backs to tight ends in the offseason. And he's done a really good job, and they've thrown in some trickery stuff here and there. They've had a couple block punts. They've got a really good returner in AJ Henning. I mean, he needs to be better, but he's done a really nice job. And yeah, I mean, they've got Jake Moody, who was named the Big Ten's kicker of the year. And you've got Brad Robbins, the punter, who I think he's been a little undervalued. I think people who follow Michigan know how good he is and what a weapon he is. But he's been solid. And, they obviously didn't have to use him very much last week, but at all. And, I think that Jake Moody has been kind of the unsung hero for this team, keeping them in games like at Nebraska. I know you were just there. Michigan had 6 red zone trips and came away with 4 field goals. They did the same thing at Michigan State, and they lost that game. But again, he's steady. He gets those points for them when they actually need touchdowns. But he's been sort of an ice in the veins guy this year.
And then in terms of kind of switching back to defense, what should Iowa fans expect to see out of Michigan's secondary?
Well, I mean, that I keep saying, they've been really tested. Have they been tested? And they obviously had a test against Ohio State last week, and I thought they did a really nice job. I mean, Dax Hill is the guy who will be the focal point, I would imagine. But there's DJ Turner, a guy who's really come on in this last month. Rod Moore, a freshman. I mean, a young guy who's really he has excelled because he has studied so much film. He's really throws himself into that, and he's now translated that to really solid performances. He had a good one against Ohio State. So, I keep scratching my head and saying, do we really know a lot about Michigan secondary yet? Because you get the focus is on Aiden and Ojabo. And but I think that they are solid. I don't think, they don't have the interception numbers. They don't have those kind of stats that Iowa has, but I think they're solid. And I think that Dax Hill is a guy who doesn't have the numbers, the stats to back him up, but he is extremely versatile, and he has been very important for them in the back end.
And then is there any kind of hangover from having a big win, considering how much that Michigan-Ohio State rivalry means? I don't think Iowa fans totally get the full experience of how important the game is.
Yeah, it really is. You're right, John. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it does mean everything here in Ohio and for Michigan.
So is there any hangover there when you have to go now and play an Iowa team that is probably a lot might be an understatement, under the radar compared to Ohio State?
No, I mean, that's extremely reasonable question to ask, because, if you had seen the field and how the fans stormed the field and the players were taking it all in. But I have to say, and again, I've covered this program for a long time, and you will find too, I think every summer the players will say, yeah, it's the closest team I've ever been around, and we're focused. And it's like everybody says it, but it really felt like that's been the case, and they've been really focused game to game. And I know that's a cliche, but they really have done that. And it's felt like a business trip every time they've had a game, every game weekend. They zero in. I think talking to players after practice Tuesday, they said they flipped the switch after 24 hours and came into the building Monday, watched film, put Ohio State to rest, and then focused on Iowa because they know that, there's so much for them to play for on Saturday, not just the Big Ten championship, but a playoff berth.
And then 24-hour rule is going to sound familiar to Iowa fans. I think during that 6-0 start, the over-under was 3 times had come up in post-game press conferences each week. Do you have a score prediction yet?
I don't. It's really bad. I should have thought about that. I'm like too busy being scattered about covering stuff. I think Michigan wins this game. I don't know what the point spread is now. I think it's probably 10, 11 points. I have a feeling it's not. I don't think Michigan's going to cover. I think it'll be a tight game. I think both defenses will be really, really tough. And but I do think Michigan wins, by a touchdown. I think that's as far as I can go right now, John. Don't put score in my mouth. I had to do it last before the Ohio State game, and all I just said 42-35. I don't know, but so close. I hit the 42. So, but I thought Ohio State would win. So, but I do think that this Michigan team has an incredible amount of confidence right now, and I think when you're talking about the hangover, I think Aiden Hutchinson is the key here. I mean, he's so supremely focused on what he wants this team to achieve, and they have this leadership council now this year it's all player run, and they really have kept each other in check, and I suspect that they've kept their emotions in check this week.
Well, thanks for joining me on the Hawk Off the Press podcast.
Well, John, thank you. And, you can tell people you made fun of me because I have an AOL address. That's okay. We'll do this again. I'll forgive you. I'll forgive you for that.
I am guilty. I confess.
That's all right. I just
hopefully
will
not
ignore
too
you
many
on Saturday.
listeners have an AOL account. I apologize to all listeners who still use their AOL account.
That's okay.
I sometimes use a Yahoo one. So
well, I just won't speak to you on Saturday at the game. So I'll just that'll be my plan.
Well, thanks again, and I will see you Saturday in Indy.
Safe travels, John, and I'm looking forward to a really, really fun game.
Got some good questions from our text message update subscribers. So Eric asks if I have snap counts for the defensive line because it seems like they've been out there a lot for a lot of big plays. And I do. I was looking at Pro Football Focus, which tracks that. And Zach Van Valkenburg has been out a lot on the field. There were 65 plays, according to media stats from the Nebraska game, that Nebraska was on offense for. And then out of those, 62 snaps on the defensive line and one more in the box for Van Valkenburg. The rest of the defensive line hasn't been out there for quite as much, but still a decent workload. Wagner is at 39 on the defensive line, Shannon at 30, Logan Lee at 30. So yeah, Zach Van Valkenburg will probably be feeling it. It's a lot of work for him, but at the same time, that's maybe where there's a little bit of a benefit to having that extra day with the Friday game versus a Saturday game, or a Friday game before a Saturday game. So you get that extra day. That probably won't hurt in terms of that recovery. Reese asks where the Hawkeyes will play when they win. Well, Reese, I appreciate the confidence. If they win, I'm not going to quite say when, but if they win, they would go to Pasadena for the Rose Bowl. If they lose, which frankly I think is probably the more likely possibility, they would go to the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, which would still be a very good bowl game, one that Iowa hasn't been to for a while. Obviously not quite the same as a Rose Bowl. It has a different ring to it. Then Matt asks if I was to bring an extra tight end to block Hutchinson. I think that's a great point because as Matt points out, Hutchinson is the best pass rusher Iowa will have seen, and it probably won't even be close in terms of how good Hutchinson is. So maybe does that mean a tight end comes in? I could see that. I could see Tyler Goodson doing a lot of pass protection as well. Spencer Petras was really complimentary of Tyler's pass protection lately when I signed to him on Tuesday. So that's another possibility. But yeah, I think if you have Hutchinson and a lot of single team coverage on the offensive line, that probably not go too well. But Iowa has some options in terms of what they'll do. I think the biggest challenge is it's not just Hutchinson, it's also Ojabo on the other side. As Angelique was talking about previously in the podcast, that, this is a really good defensive line here for Michigan. So I think that's where the game will be won or lost for Iowa, is really going to be that Iowa offensive line versus Michigan defensive line. So it'll be interesting to see what exactly is in the game plan there for the Hawkeyes. And then Mark gave me a laugh with this question. Will anyone mind if I close my eyes until it's over? Well, I don't think anyone's going to mind. I think there's a chance, though, that you might not want to miss it. There's a chance that Iowa really can be competitive in this game. They are a double-digit underdog last I checked. My score prediction so far is 31-17. Maybe I might see something to change that, but yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup for Iowa. But also, I think it's important to note that these games don't happen very often, and simply even being at this stage is pretty special for Iowa. Well, for any team. The only Big Ten West team that's been to the stage more often than Iowa since this game started in 2011 is Wisconsin. So it's a pretty unique thing where Northwestern's been there, Nebraska's been there. As hard as that is maybe to believe, considering the last couple of years at Nebraska, but there aren't too many teams that get to this stage. So it's a special moment for Iowa. Even if it's a loss, it's still something that this senior class will have accomplished that they didn't accomplish in their junior, sophomore, or freshman years. So I think that's another important thing to keep in mind, even as Iowa shows up as a double-digit underdog with some kind of big questions looming, whether it be offensive line versus Michigan's defensive line or some other ones, is, hey, this is a pretty cool opportunity for the Hawkeyes. So doesn't happen every day, doesn't happen every year. So kind of throwing it back to 2015. So thank you for the great questions. And I'll be back with an edition of After the Final Score with Mike after the game. It could be a rather late recording of the podcast, considering the late start time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that will be out, though, this weekend. Thank you all for following along with the regular season coverage over the last several weeks. And we will talk Hawks later.